We'll give it here a minute or so till the looks like it slows down on people coming in. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Okay, it looks like it started slowing down. People coming in. So let's get started. So this is our 5th CAD webinar. This topic is advanced corridor editing. Um, you know, and some of you might not think it's so advanced, but we're just going to go over some things that might be helpful for you guys. But just my same initial slides here to go over same things. And if you guys could mute yourselves. Because I'm getting some double audio. Let's see here. I think. Okay. So ORD overview training is still on hold. I just had a question today about that. I think we might try to see if we could set something up virtually if we have enough people that need it. So stay tuned for that. We might try to do something virtually. The wiki page, remember this is a good place that we're putting all of our training content. Matt just posted a whole bunch of new videos on different topics. So it wouldn't hurt to go to that page and, you could even bookmark it or follow it. And then you'll get like emails when we post something new. But that is where all these webinar recordings will go. So the previous 4 are there. So don't forget about that wiki page. Monthly webinars. Here's kind of the rough schedule we've got going on. Bi-monthly open sessions are still on hold as well. Let's see when we can start having them again. I'm assuming this next one that we have scheduled is probably going to get postponed. Internal CAD managers meeting. These are for like more of the CAD manager side. We held the last one virtually. We'll probably do the next one same way. And then our main CAD user group meeting, that includes the externals with it. I think we're going to be doing a live Teams event. And I know it's coming up quickly, so I got a meeting set up tomorrow with the CAD people to get the agenda and start getting that registration out there for that one because it is going to be here before we know it. So keep your eyes out for that. So before I get into it, I just wanted to just go over a couple quick updates. I think by now all districts should have been updated to Power Geopack SS10 and OpenRose Designer 2020 Release 1. I think we have a couple people in central office left. I think Thursday might be the last go around. So if we did miss anyone, if you notice you didn't get updated, please let us know. So I will be updating our website so that the externals know that we are now on this version. So hopefully after Thursday night, I think is the last one, everyone will be updated. But do note that with SS10, hopefully you guys all saw the email and the short video and all the different ways you can get the new shortcuts, but the installation path changed for SS10, so all the existing shortcuts to launch Power Geopack broke. So we shot out an email out, kind of how to get new shortcuts. We also recommended you reset your preferences. And same thing with OpenRes Designer, recommend you reset your preferences. So if you guys have any trouble with that, let us know, contact us. If you didn't get the update, please let us know as well. We'll get you the update, because there is, on the ORD side, there is compatibility issues between previous releases and this one. So we do want to make sure that everyone in our agency is updated. And then the other thing I want to note is I think two webinars ago, I showed the fixed ditch templates and kind of what I was doing for the end conditions in our template library. That has been released in the standards now. I said I had to finish some stuff up. So I did that, and it has released. But if your project was already created before I released it, that project has an older copy of the ITL file for that project or work set. So you can, if you haven't done anything yet and you want those templates, you can just replace the ITL file with the seed one. Or if you've already done stuff, you can use Template Library Organizer to move things around and get those newer templates inside your workset template. If you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. I just wanted to quickly note that before we got into it. Seemed like this is a good audience of CAD users. Okay, so we're going to go over kind of some corridor edits, but the Bentley virtual conference was a couple weeks ago. I sent that email out to hopefully you guys all saw that. They had a lot of good stuff, so hopefully you guys were able to maybe sit on some of them. But all the stuff they showed is on demand. So I'll send this PowerPoint out. You guys can get these links. But they have a lot of good sessions. I noted two here. These two kind of go along with today's session, and it kind of shows some more things on corridor edits. So these links will take you to like those directly. So it might not be a bad idea if you're looking for more stuff on this topic. They also had additional on-demand webinars. So the conference was like 3 days, and there was like 20-some sessions, but they had additional, 30, 40 plus on-demand sessions that went with it. They had some hands-on workshops. That's over on the Learn server for the conference. So if you wanted to do more of a workshop-based thing, that's on the Learn server. And the live user speaker sessions, I think, are they going on now? I think this week or something. But I guess if I click on this, it will take me there. I got to get out of presentation mode though. So still got some speaker sessions going on. So these are the on-demand ones I was talking about. You click on a given topic, like road modeling, and you can see all the on-demand sessions that they have. You can just click ones and register, and then it gives you a link, and you can watch it on demand. So give those a look if you're looking to see some more stuff on ORD. It had a lot of good content. All right. So to today's webinar, corridor edits. So I just jotted down, a bunch of different edits, template drops, parametric constraints, point controls, key stations, end condition exceptions, secondary alignments, corridor clipping, target aliasing. So you guys probably heard some of them, used some of them, maybe not used all of them. So we're going to go over most of them today so you can see how they work and see how you can apply them to your current projects. So first, target aliasing. You might have heard of it, but maybe not have used it or fully understand what it's doing. So we got a couple different examples on how to use target aliasing here. Basically, it lets you specify, aliases for different targets. So one of the most common ones being like an active surface. So I have some screenshot up here. So in your end condition properties, you target type, train model, what train model, the active train model. That's how most of our end conditions are set up for searching. But target aliasing allows you to kind of further define that and say, you know what, I want to target, this corridor first, and then if I can't find this corridor, then target this surface. That's kind of what this screenshot is showing. Gives you the ability to kind of say this active surface can be represented in these different aliases is what they're calling them. So let's go to the video and we'll show kind of how that's all working. This video is going to show how to use target aliasing and corridor clipping. So this is a more simple use of these tools. We'll go over some more examples of how to use them in the following videos here. So this one I just found some test data to help demonstrate a use case. So what I'm about to show, I'm not saying that this is design quality or what you would do in this given situation, but more so I'm using this to show how the tools work, and then you guys can take the knowledge and apply it appropriately. Okay. So what I have going on right now is I have my two different ramps here. I got this ramp and I got this ramp, right? And so what I did was I just threw in the shoulders for each one. So that, I just show the shoulders and the gratings. And I just threw a ditch in on each one. And so I used the fixed ditch templates that I talked about, I believe it was 2 CAD webinars ago. So those fixed ditch templates kind of force a ditch in. So what I'm talking about is these templates right here. So if we get, we're forcing a ditch, and so this is all great when you're in this kind of condition. But as your surface gets, lower, in order to actually get a ditch to draw in, you're going to need to push that ditch down lower. And so that's what these templates are doing, is forcing that ditch to be placed here. So we're going to use this as a way to help us out in this situation, okay? So right now, as in, obviously, I don't really want these two ditches overlapping each other, right? What if I really only want one ditch? Okay, how do I do that? And how do I do that so that I don't lose my standard slopes, right? Granted, I could definitely, point control both ditches to a common point, but then I'm going to lose this slope value that I want to maintain. So the way you got to first think about it is not having two ditches, but having one corridor target another corridor. So in this case, I'm going to take the approach that I want this ditch to come and match up with this. Okay. So remember, this fixed ditch, this point, floats up and down until it found that surface, and that's how it found this, right? So what I want to do is I don't want it to find this surface. I want it to find my corridor surface. So if you think about it, have this point float down until it reaches this force slope. Okay? So we do that with target aliasing. So if I go to the next station here, you'll see that they kind of start getting further apart. So that concept of having this float down until it finds that force slope won't work in this situation, right? Because it won't ever hit anything. So how do we fix that? Well, we could just simply make this go deeper so that we know this will always hit this force slope. And so that's what I'm going to do in this case. So I'm going to go to my template. I'm going to just push my ditch down, say, 5 feet vertically. So when I do that, there you can see it's definitely a lot lower. So I'll close that, save it, and then I will update the template to the library. And now you'll see that it shot it way down, right? So granted, obviously you're not going to do this. We're just trying to get this piece long enough so this corridor can find this force. Okay, so we'll fix this up. So now let's add this target aliasing that I'm talking about. So we want to change this to to find this instead of this, right? So I'm going to go up here to my define target aliasing. I'm going to click that, and it's going to say, okay, locate the corridor that you want to define it on. So I want to define it on this corridor right here, right? So I believe that is this one now. So when I select that, I'm going to get my options here for target. And so you can have more targets depending on how you set your end condition up, which we'll go over in another section. But for the active surface, I can tell it aliases to search for. So I have surfaces and corridors here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my corridor 34, which is this one, and then I'm going to move over my terrain model. Okay, so right now the active surface, what I'm saying is look for this first, treat that as active surface. If you don't find it, then look for this and treat this as active surface. Okay, so when I hit apply, this point right here, instead of searching for my active surface, this existing terrain model, it should now look for this force slope first because it's on this corridor. So you should see this jump down to here and maintain this slope, right? So let me hit apply. And I'll have to come in here and refresh this view to get to updates. I'll just scroll. So there you see that it moved down. So now I have my ditch in here, but I have this leftover piece here that I don't really need anymore, right? So what I could do is I can just clip it out. So I'm going to come up in my corridor clipping. It's going to say locate or select a corridor to be clipped, right? So I want to clip, this corridor right here, right? So that should be this one. And what do you want to clip it from, or the reference will be, this other corridor. I want to clip that. So I want to clip that piece out. So here we're going to select this. And then you could select more. I don't have any more. I'm going to reset. And now you'll see that it clipped out that piece there. And you can kind of tell there's a little point right there that kind of shows you the difference between them right there. So now if we go forward one, you can see we're kind of forcing that ditch in, and we maintain our slopes. We look at it in 3D, there you have some nice stuff going on here until you get later on. So clearly over here, the target aliasing, stopped finding this force slope because we are now up above it somewhere. So then it just went back to the active surface. So over there, yeah, we'd have to do something different here. So keep in mind, I'm just showing you how the tools are working and you can apply it. So that is one example that you can use to kind of, in this situation with target aliasing and corridor clipping. Okay, so that was kind of a simple example. So now I have another example here. It's going to go over a little bit more advanced target aliasing example. Same data set. We're just going to be kind of showing how you could possibly fix this area up here. Okay, let's go over another target aliasing example here. Got my same data set that we just showed. I got a ramp here and then a higher elevation ramp. So this time, instead of doing a ditch, let's throw in a wall. I know I need a wall over here. This is my grading. I don't have enough horizontal distance to do that. So I'm just going to throw a wall through the whole thing and see what it looks like. I want to reiterate that I'm showing you the functionality of the tools and how to use them. I'm not showing you how to do design. Okay, so you still need to apply the design side of this. So use what I'm showing you and apply it appropriately is what I'm getting at here. All right, so for the wall, I need to have a constant slope come off of my higher elevation ramp here, and so wherever that slope, wherever it meets my wall, is how high I want my wall to be. So as I go along this ramp, my wall height should be changing. Okay, so let's jump over, and before we do target aliasing, we're going to have to obviously update our end conditions to have a wall. So let me go over and do that now. So we're going to go into our end condition, and For the higher elevation ramp, I'm going to get rid of all of my end conditions. Okay, so I'm going to do all my grading work or end condition work on the lower elevation ramp. I'm going to go over to here, and I'm just going to delete all of these components as well. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to add a little graded shoulder piece and then the wall, and then I'll have the grading at the top of the wall. So let me just set a feature definition here. Apply fixes, and then let me add a new constrained component. I will give this component wall feature definition, or not wall, I'm sorry, graded shoulder. I'll just do graded shoulder. Now I'll just place this in, and then what I want to do is use my dynamic settings to place that at a horizontal distance of 1, and maybe I'll just do a 1:8 slope. So there, add that in. I'll make it so it's not a closed shape, and then I'll finish it. I just got a little piece, and then I'm going to build my wall off of this here. So now I'm just going to add another component. We'll just do unconstrained because I'm going to go and add the constraints in later. I'll leave it on the wall type. I'll change this component feature definition to the wall. I'll just name it wall. Okay. So I want to roughly come in here. I want to just draw a wall in. And let me make this a closed shape, and then I'll finish it. Okay. So now I'm going to come here and fix my constraints up a little bit. So I want this point to be horizontally and vertically constrained from this point, which I probably should give it a name, but for demonstration purposes, I'll just leave it. So horizontally, I want maybe a foot, and then vertically I want to be nothing. Now this piece is this point is what I'm going to use to kind of float this up and down. So I want this to be constrained horizontally about this point to be 0. And I'll come back to the other constraint here. So now I want this point to be horizontally and vertically constrained to this point. So I want the horizontal to be 1, the vertical to be 0. I mean -1. Okay. So now I have kind of my wall drawn in here. And so I need this point to kind of float up and down. And we should be able to test that point. Let me get on the point. So if I test the vertical control, you see the wall moves up and down. That's what we kind of wanted to do, right? So now, in order to get this slope, this grading to, kind of find this higher elevation ramp, I need a null point in here. So what I need to do is I need to add an end condition here, and it's going to just be a null point. So if I go to my miscellaneous, I do not construct. I say null points, really I do not construct point. What component really doesn't matter since I'm not going to actually draw it in. So give it a DNC as a name. Okay, so when I draw this, I want this to go and find I want this component to be going and looking for this ramp here. So instead of saying I want to target the active terrain model, I want to say target linear both. So I want to say I want to target something vertically and horizontally. And so I'm just going to call this um, maybe ramp B or something. All right, so I'm just giving it something to target, and then we'll use target aliasing to define what that target actually is. Okay, so let's just throw a point in. It really doesn't matter where we throw this in because it's not going to get drawn. Or I'm not really going to use it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to throw in this point up here. And so here at this point, I want to check for interception, and I want to make sure it's infinite so I can go find it, right? So let me just place that, and I will finish. All right. So I'm saying go search for this target in horizontal, vertical direction until you find it. So don't care about the slope or anything. Okay. So now I need to draw in this component right here so that I get this slopes. The trick is that I actually don't need this to be an end condition. I just want this to be a regular component, right? So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to add a constrained component. We can make it be the graded shoulder maybe. Graded shoulder. That doesn't matter since I already have 2 points here. I'll turn this over to the graded shoulder. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to just snap to this point and then snap to this point, and then I'm going to finish. Okay. So now I need to make sure this point is fully constrained, and so I want it to be a slope from this point. And so maybe I only want it to be like, I don't know, 4-to-1 slope. Okay. All right, so that you saw it brought that wall down there. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to this point. I'm going to say, you know what, but I definitely don't want it to draw. So I'm going to check on do not construct, and that line goes away. Okay, so now let's test this out. So now you'll notice that we don't actually have the active surface anymore because there's no end conditions that target a terrain. This one is showing you your target, and your target just was a linear feature. So when I go to draw, it's just going to be, a point. All right, so you see as I move up and down and away, I'm maintaining that slope value, and then it's just moving my wall up and down. Okay. All right, so now let me close that out. Now we're ready to apply this. So let's save this. And then let's update these so we'll synchronize with our template to get these changes that I made. So there's a wall, and should get rid of the grading. Okay, so obviously I'm not actually doing anything. I'm not targeting when you target. The target was, I believe I named it ramp B, right? So right now this doesn't have knowledge of that target. Okay, so that end condition is failing. So what we want to do is we want to set up target aliasing. I'm going to hit define target aliasing, and I want to locate my corridor, which will be this one. And you'll see that there is ramp B listed, which is the target that I named in the end condition. But I don't see any surfaces or corridors or anything. So what I need to do is actually add this as a reference for it to show up. So in order to target alias it, I need to add a corridor reference so it shows up in that target aliasing dialog. So to do that, I need to add this corridor reference here. So I'm going to come here and add corridor reference, and I'm going to hit locate this corridor. That's the one I want to add the reference to, and then what is the reference? So I did say linear both. So I want to make sure I go and grab this top line here that I want to match up to. So I'm going to click that, and then I'll reset because I don't need anything else. And it will now be added as a corridor reference. So if I take a look at that corridor, I look at my external references, it shows up there now. Okay, so now I'm ready to target alias. So I come here, I'm going to locate my corridor, and now I see that in there. So for my target of ramp B, I'm saying that this is what I want it to use for the target, and I'm going to hit apply. And then you see that my wall jumps up and meets that. So let me zoom out here in 3D so you can see what's going on here. So there is the wall coming up and coming down. So take this for the functionality side, not the design side. But there's a way of how you can use target aliasing and target things. So the two examples, one was more of a let's just target surfaces, just use the active surface target, and then the second one was actually going in and defining your own target and then adding an alias to that target. There's a lot more you can do. Hopefully this shows you kind of the basic functionality, and then you can apply it onto your projects. Okay, so those are what I had for target aliasing. Granted, I didn't draw like a wall footing in or anything like that. So hopefully you saw the power and the functionality there. So some other things that I wanted to show is secondary alignment. I feel like everyone's heard of this, but a lot of people don't really understand what exactly it's doing. So there's actually two different ways you can use a secondary alignment or define it. One is just a standalone, or you can do it within your point control, which is where you guys have probably seen that, where it asks you, is this a secondary alignment? So what secondary alignment is doing is when you define something as being a secondary alignment, you're telling the corridor to process a little bit differently. So in this screenshot, this is your main line. So your processing is always perpendicular to your mainline alignment. What secondary alignment does is when that processing reaches what you define as a secondary alignment, it will actually change the processing to be perpendicular to this alignment rather than your mainline alignment. So I thought that this screenshot kind of demonstrated that well. If you have your corridor maybe coming up on your ramp and you stop your corridor maybe here, and then you switch to a ramp corridor when you get past the gore area or something. So I have a video that kind of goes over that, so I'll play that. This video is going to go over how to use secondary alignments with your corridors. So there are two different ways you can add a secondary alignment to your corridor. One through point controls, and one just adding a standalone secondary alignment. I have a data set here. It's just a ramp or main line with an off ramp here. So I was looking for a data set to kind of showcase how a secondary alignment works. And so this seemed like a good demonstration of how to show how it works. So what I'm about to do is by no means, design level or design quality. I'm just doing something to showcase the functionality of the tools. Okay, so keep that in mind. So what I have here is I just have a template right now. It just has some pavement build up, shoulder, and then some grading on the end. And so when I come up onto this off ramp, all I'm going to do is I'm going to add in just a pavement piece here to kind of push this corridor over into here and add the gradient. Okay, so I'm gonna switch my template. So if I go and I look at my templates that I already have some made. So right now it's on mainline, so it has, just your two, like the two sides of the road and then some shoulders. So I made this one, and you can kind of maybe think of that as a core area or whatever you want. Again, demonstration purposes. So I'm going to switch to that. And so obviously I need to fix this up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is add a point control so that this pavement that I added in gets controlled to this line. So it kind of pushes it out. So I'm just going to come up and I will add a point control. I'm going to locate my corridor. And then I want it to start at probably just right here is fine. And go to here. And then this description, demo. Okay, what point do I want to move? I want to move this point. I want it to be horizontally controlled, linear geometry. What geometry? This geometry. Then here's the option for the secondary alignment. I'm going to leave it as no, and then I'll turn it to yes so you guys can see what it actually does. Okay, so I'll do no, priority, 0 offsets, start and stop, and then, so we kind of add this little piece in. So let me turn on my 3D model reference. So you kind of can see the processing of all those drop locations there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to open up my corridor objects. I'm going to go look at my point control. And I'm going to check on use a secondary alignment. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but if you see what happened is that once it hits this alignment that we called a secondary alignment, it changes the processing to be, kind of angled, so it follows this alignment for the processing, for the perpendicular processing, rather than this alignment. If that makes sense. So really just geometry, doesn't have to be an alignment. So without the secondary alignment, the processing rules just stay perpendicular to your alignment. When you add in a secondary alignment, it'll make the processing go perpendicular to that once it reaches that as it goes out. Okay. So that is one way to add a secondary alignment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that point control. And I'm going to just turn that checkbox off. So, if you don't have a situation where you're making a point control, so you don't really have that option to add a secondary alignment, what do you do if you have some geometry that you want to use a secondary alignment, but you're not point controlling to it? So that is why there is also just the ability to add a secondary alignment by itself. So if I go and I look at my edits, there's create secondary alignment right there. I'll say locate corridor. I'll say locate what you want to use as your secondary alignment. Then you give station range, so you can say you only use this between, this location and this location. So you get a little more flexibility here. I think my video just jumped there. Back that up. That point control. And I'm going to just turn that checkbox off. So, if you don't have a situation where you're making a point control, so you don't really have that option to add a secondary alignment, what do you do if you have some geometry that you want to use a secondary alignment, but you're not point controlling to it? So that is why there is also just the ability to add a secondary alignment by itself. So if I go and I look at my edits, there's create secondary alignment right there. I'll say locate corridor. I'll say locate what you want to use as your secondary alignment. Then you can give station range, so you can say you only use this between this location and this location. So you get a little more flexibility here. I'm just gonna leave it locked to the start and end for this demonstration. Now you can do a start and an end offset for your secondary alignment. If you need to do something like that, for this case, it's just going to be 0 and then 0 for the end offset. So it's just going to follow right along that secondary alignment. Click, and then now you see it does the same thing with the processing. So those are the two different ways you can add a secondary alignment. Again, this video is just showcasing the functionality of it. So, apply this appropriately. Okay, so since this webinar is on corridor edits, I figured I'd go through and just show you guys some more edits, just in case maybe you haven't used them yet or don't know exactly how they're working. So I'm back in the same area where I showed the secondary alignment stuff. So after I added that secondary alignment and I added that extra pavement piece for this area, I just added it to the whole corridor, right? So when I did that, it added it here where I don't need it. So let's, there's a couple of different things you can do. So one thing you could just, make it slide over to 0 so that it just doesn't draw in. So you could do that with point control, or you could do that with parametric constraint. So we did point control over here, so let's do parametric constraint. And parametric constraint is, it takes less processing power. So if you have the ability to use a parametric constraint over point control, in terms of processing time, it's better to do parametric constraint. So parametric constraints are basically controlling a constraint on from your template over a given station range. So if I take a look at my template, so this is my extra piece that I add that I just want to slide this over. So what I did was, if I take a look here, this width, I gave it a label of core width. So that label is what I'm going to use to control this value. Okay. So I'm going to come up and select my corridor, and I'm going to go and add a parametric constraint, and I can give a start station. I'll just come in here right there. I'll lock to the end, and then what label do you want to constrain about? So I use this drop down. I'll select core width, and then the start offset or start value of that constraint, I'm going to make it 0. And then the end one down here, I want to be 0 as well. And that should clean it all up. Right. So now, another thing I wanted to show was like a key point. It's real simple. So like when I added that point, or when I added that parametric constraint, it added that drop location or processing location right there at that point. But what if I didn't have that and I needed it to calculate something right there to make it nice and neat. So you can do that just by adding a key station. So what I'm going to do now is actually open up my corridor objects here. And let me go ahead and remove that parametric constraint just so we can see what's going on here. Okay, so now, maybe I want to force a processing location, right where those two meet. Again, this is for demonstration purposes. So I can come up here, I can just say, create a key station, locate the corridor, and then what station do you want it at? So I'm just going to come over here and just graphically select that. And that'll force it to process right at that location. Okay, so maybe some other things we do is maybe we don't put that template through the whole corridor, and maybe we just want the template that adds this extra pavement piece just through this part, right? So, we could do that pretty easily. So first, let's take our template, and let's change it back to just this one without that extra pavement piece. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is instead of adding, changing the template, I'm going to make a template drop. So I'm changing the template of this corridor just between this range. So, again, there's multiple ways to do all of these edits here, but there is a new template drop button right here. So I'm going to locate my corridor, and I'm going to pick my template, which is going to be this one with the extra pavement piece. And then what range do I want? So, for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to come out, maybe here, and then I want to come down and just put it right at this location. Drop interval we'll leave at 5. It's our typical drop interval that we use for everything. So now I have 2 drops on this one corridor, and they're 2 different templates. Okay, and you notice that my my point control that I added stays because I added that to the corridor, right? So it had the same point name, so the point control was still able to process, right? So I went a little too far, so I'm thinking maybe my point control ended, or we can fix that up. But let's just go in and check that point control, fix it up here. Go to my bucket. Control. Just move this back a little bit. There, you see that. Fix that up there. So I just ended my point control, or started it since it's going this way. After where I put that template drop. So that last one didn't catch it. That's why it was coming back. So that was an easy fix. Okay, so now let's talk about another edit, which I feel like is underutilized, and that is the end condition exceptions. So this might not be the best data set to show it on. Hopefully you see the functionality of it. Really, the end condition exceptions has a couple different modes with it. Let me just get in and show you here. So I'm going to come in to my corridor, and I'm going to grab the end condition exception. So right here, this drop down kind of shows you the different things. So there's really 3 main things you can do. An override, and override is pretty much just saying take whatever's your current end condition is there and replace it with something else. So just do something new there. And then you have that option for a left and right side. And then transition is, it tells it how to transition basically from one end condition to another. So if you have, maybe different point names or something so they didn't connect automatically, you can tell it which points connect to which points so that you can have a nice smooth like transition. You can do that for left and right. And then the third option is just backbone only, which just removes the end condition from that side. Okay. So they are really powerful here. And, when you come into situations where you got different grading on, say, both left and right sides, I see people gravitate towards creating template drops to manage the changes in their end conditions. And, you know, it would be a lot easier if they would just use end condition exception. One of the main reasons is you start getting like all these template drops just to change a little end condition. And then what actually happens a lot, what I see is you have, different end conditions on both sides, and then those end and start at different stations. So you end up with a bunch of little pieces just to jump back and forth with the different start and end parts, which I thought that's the whole reason why the end conditions exceptions are here. So say I wanted to just kind of do like, I don't know, left override here. So I give it a name, left override. I can give my station range. Maybe I just go from here to here. Now it'll open up the template, and what you can do is you can come in here and you can remove everything that's there now, and you can go and drag in something completely different. So let's see if I grab something here. Um, let's just see if I grab one that's different. So I'll reflect this over. And so yeah, that's different, just to kind of show. So I have a different force slope, a ditch force slope there. If you see though, from the old and new, I have a different one there. So I'll hit OK. And I should see that processing change. Um, it wasn't that drastic, but maybe rotate around a little bit. Kind of see the jump out right there as it comes back. So that, yeah, maybe I should have done a little more drastic change here. So let me go back in there. So if I go to my, I can just exception, I can hit this button. I can go and edit that again. So I'm going to come in here to this point, and I'm going to push this out more so we can see what's going on here. So I'll just push it out another, I don't know, 2 feet. Yeah. Hit apply. So push it out, hit OK, reprocess, that should jump out there. So now we can definitely tell that there was the change, and so it only affected it there. All right, so since our point names are set up pretty well, when you do stuff like that, you'll see that when it transitions between different slopes or different end conditions, that the points and components connect nicely. And that's because we do have a standard naming and template set up to kind of alleviate that issue. But that's not always going to solve the problem, right? There's going to be cases where, you go from maybe a ditch to no ditch, and you have less points, so that transition didn't really work out well. So that's a um, good thing to have, like a transition condition exception. So I'm going to just add one to kind of show how that works here. So if I come in here and I go and add another end condition exception, this time it's going to be a left transition. Okay, now what station range I want? Let's just call this demo 2, 3, I forget which one I'm on. Okay, so I'm going to do left transition, and then you can define how long that transition should take. What you want to make sure you do is the start and end spots are actually on the two different end conditions, because that's how it picks up the different points. So if I stop it like right here, it might pick up the wrong end condition point. So you do want to make sure that you get fully inside of that part to show the different end condition here. So I'll just go, say I'll just rough in something like from here to say here. So what comes up here now is it already found a bunch of points to connect to. So you'll see here's the kind of the first part of your end condition, that first range and your second range. So you kind of see them kind of next to each other. And what you can do is you can tell what points to go to what points. So this one up here didn't connect, so you can just draw those together like that. That's saying, okay, take this point to this point, right? You could, I mean, just to show that this can work, you can do, like, if you wanted to, you can go from, say, this point down to this point. Should I grab the right white one there? So I'd say to take this point down to here, which obviously you're not going to do that, but just kind of showing that you can define how the transition goes. So if you had one end condition that was a ditch, and then the other condition that there wasn't a ditch, you could take, the ditch part and take it down to that given tie point on your no ditch part. So I'll hit OK here. And this is giving you a warning saying that if you do this, it has to remove constraints in order to make the transition possible. So it's just giving you a warning that your constraints aren't going to be held anymore. And then this next screen, you can kind of go through the transition. So it's kind of showing you here's what it's going to do, how it's going to make that transition. Hit OK. I won't really notice much change because I just kind of prolonged the transition that was already happening. So it just took longer to make that transition. So don't forget about that. This is really useful and powerful. Okay, so I do have one more example. We're going to go a little over to hour a little bit, but this is going to be a good example. Hopefully you guys get a lot out of this one. So after this, we'll finish up. Another corridor edit that might be useful is when you run into a situation I have on the screen. So I have our training data set up here, so you can actually find part of this in our training exercise. But this is 185, and this is Jameson Road. And so this intersection, I have my main line, 185, the grading and shoulder are going through the intersection, which clearly I don't want, so I need to remove those. So there's a couple different ways you could remove the, first you could just do a corridor clip and just clip this corridor, your main line, to your side road. But that might work in most cases, but I think there's better way to handle that. And so there's really two other ways I see you could handle this, but they both kind of come back to display rules on the template. So let's take a look at the display rules and how those work, and then I can show you how to do the corridor edits to kind of activate those display rules. So I'm going to open up my template drop here. So our templates library already has these null points set up, and these are kind of the starting point of this display rule I'm talking about. So just to show what it does, if I test the horizontal point control, so the point is named int left, is for intersection left. So basically, whenever this point gets moved to the left of center line, the grading and the shoulder disappear. So it basically says my display rule, I don't want to show those when this condition is met. Same thing for if you go with the intersection right one, if you move this to the right, it just controls the display on the right side. Now we also have driveway left and right, which does something similar. So if I show you that one, in this case, it is just removing the grading and the shoulder steps, but not the actual shoulder. Okay. So how do these work? How does the display rule work? So display rules are set up and then they're applied to a component. So if I just take a look at this shoulder component, you'll see display rule. It has not intersection LT for left. So if I hit edit,
Excuse me, is this meeting for
you see here's all the display
Worcester
rules.
Road?
Yeah, this is the arcade webinar. We're coming up on the end of it. So
Okay,
it's for OpenRes designer, but we're actually coming up. There's only a little bit left of it. So we have set up. So intersection left is this one. So if I edit, we can take a look at what it's saying. And so basically it's saying horizontal between my left null point and my PGL point, which is right here. So it's saying when the value is less than basically 0.1, -0.1. So as it moves over here, then this is true. Okay. So, but what we want is when this moves over to this side for the display not to be true. So that's why we put a not in front of it. So when this intersection and LT rule is not true, then don't display these. Okay. So same thing for the grading, but grading is a little bit more complicated because now I need this grading rule. I need to use both the display rule for my intersection and driveway, depending, because in both those cases the grading disappears. And so the way you could do that is with a little bit more expression here, more complicated expression. So I have not drive left or intersection left. So if either of those, fall true, then don't show. Okay. So that is how the display rules are set up. Now, how do you actually trigger the display rule? So right now, this point is fully constrained, so it's always going to stay, in line with your center line here, with the PGL point. So what we'd have to do is somehow, trigger this point to move over. Okay. And so when you move it over, there's two things that come to mind. Is A, you could just do a parametric constraint and just constrain this value to something, negative to move it to the left, just between the range that you want. Or you could utilize a horizontal feature constraint. And the way this is working is if the corridor finds this feature, then constrain this point to where that feature is. All right, and there's a range listed of -100. What that means is only search out to -100. So if the feature is beyond -100, then it won't find it. Okay, so in the for horizontal feature constraint way, you'd have to draw in something in on your corridor so that it could find it, whereas the constraint, you would just add a parametric constraint. So I'm going to demo both ways, and then you can use whatever way you like better. But that's how it's working. So now I'm going to do, what I want to do is first I'll just do the parametric constraint way. So we will just add a parametric constraint that pushes that null point to the left, which the station is going this way, so this is left, between my radius returns. So I'm just going to go to my corridor, and I'm going to add a parametric constraint. So now it's going to ask me from what range. So I'm just going to come in here and lock on my radius return, and then lock on my radius return. Hit the end key so it's not locked to the end, or alt key so it's not locked to the end. And then I will select that. And now what do I want to control? What label? If you guys remember, it was called it left. Okay. And now what offset do I want? This really doesn't matter. I just need to push this point somewhere out here to trigger it. So let's just do a -50 and a -50. Oh, it's 5, -50. And so we should see that point. So that point pushed it out, which triggered the display rule. And now you can see that. So what you notice is that there's still a gap here. Why is there a gap? Well, that's because there's not a processing location between there. So if you want to clean that up, you just got to add a key station, right at your right outside your radius return, so that it'll process right there, and this will solve. So that's easy to do. Come up here, add key station, select our corridor, and then we just want it to be right there. Zoom out a little bit. And so what you'll notice is I'm technically right at the radius return, so it's getting that feature constraint that we did. So I just need to push it just slightly outside, so I can actually click on this this little graphic here that represents my key station, and I can just push it back just, a 10, 100. And that should be enough to get this off, and it does. So clearly I got some different gradings here that you obviously need to fix up, but we won't do that. And then you can add another key station to the other side. So that is one way. So the other way would be using the feature constraint. So let's turn off our parametric constraint here. So I'll just unenable that parametric constraint. Now I got my grading back through here. So now the other way would be through a horizontal feature constraint. So what I need to do is I need to draw in the line that represents the limits of where I want my display rule to be triggered. So I can just come to my geometry. I can just, what I want to do is use my main line as an offset from my main line to draw this piece. So there is under lines, or under offsets and tapers, there's single offset partial. So I'll come in here, I'll choose my feature definition. So again, I need to make sure I choose the feature definition that the template point was set to find. So that is, under modeling, template points, miscellaneous, intersection, match line. Okay. You can give it a name. I'll just leave it like that for now. So now it's saying to locate what element you want to offset from. So I'm going to locate this element. And now this one is what offset do you want? So here, since we had that range set in the template to be -100, we can't go past -100, right? Or then the feature won't be found. So I'll just do -60. But now keep this first part before you click. You're setting the offset and you're setting the start location. So I will just come in here and snap my start to this radius return. And then now I need the end distance. I'm going to snap it to the other radius. Okay. So now I have this point drawn in. Right now, the corridor has no knowledge of that point, or that line. So I need to add this as a corridor reference in order for the corridor to see it and then trigger that display rule. So I'm going to come up to my corridor edits here, add it as a reference, select my corridor, locate what I want my reference to be, reset, and then should reprocess, and you see I have that display rule kick in. So, there's two different ways to kind of achieve the same thing. One way you actually have to draw on a line. Another way is just, parametric constraint. So, maybe you don't want this extra line in there. Like I said, that's a preference. So you guys can choose which way you want to use it. But that is, some ways to handle the situation. I think that is better than doing a template drop and then removing it out. I think this way is a lot easier than, so I would not recommend like adding a template drop just to remove those grading pieces. I would recommend doing this way. So hopefully you guys saw what was going on and you can apply that to your projects as needed. Okay, so that's all the examples I had. Hopefully you guys found it helpful, knowledgeable. If you guys have any questions, we can open it up to questions. I think you guys are probably muted. One thing to note is that we can mute you, but we cannot unmute you. This Microsoft Teams purposely did that. So if you guys are trying to talk, make sure you just go into the Teams meeting and unmute yourself. I don't think there were any comments, were there? Yeah. You guys are quiet today. Any questions at all about anything I've shown or just in general with the CAD updates that went out? All right. So if you guys have any other questions and you don't want to speak up, you guys can always contact us directly. We'll be happy to answer your questions. But hopefully you guys can apply these to your projects. So we will see you in the next CAD webinar.